Imagine building a company from your garage, turning it into one of the world's most revolutionary technology companies, and then being kicked out of the company you helped create. Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly what happened to Steve Jobs. In 1985, Apple's board removed Jobs from the company he had helped build. And the shocking part? Jobs didn't leave because Apple had completely failed. He left because of a power struggle over the company's future. So what really happened? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple with a simple mission: build computers ordinary people could use. Wozniak was the engineering genius, while Jobs was the visionary who understood products, design, and marketing. Together, they created something special, and Apple grew rapidly. But there was one problem. Jobs was brilliant but extremely demanding. He pushed employees hard, challenged people constantly, and could be difficult and brutally direct. Apple's board believed Jobs had the vision to transform the company, but questioned whether he had the experience and temperament to run a growing corporation. Jobs wanted more control, while the board wanted stability. So in 1983, Jobs recruited John Sculley, the successful CEO of PepsiCo, to become Apple's CEO. At first, the relationship looked perfect. Jobs had the vision, while Sculley had corporate experience. But eventually, they began seeing Apple's future very differently. Then came the Macintosh. Jobs believed it could change personal computing, but sales didn't meet expectations. Apple was also struggling with the Lisa. Pressure built inside the company. Sculley believed Apple needed a more disciplined business strategy, while Jobs wanted to keep pushing revolutionary products. Their disagreement became personal, and their relationship began falling apart. Then came the moment that changed everything. Sculley removed Jobs from his leadership role over the Macintosh division. Jobs was furious. He took his fight directly to Apple's board, hoping they would support his vision. Instead, the board sided with Sculley. Suddenly, Steve Jobs had lost control of the company he helped create. Whether Jobs was formally fired or effectively forced out has been debated, but the result was the same. Jobs was out of Apple. The founder was gone, the visionary was gone, and Jobs was only 30 years old. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of one of the greatest comebacks in business history. After leaving Apple, Jobs founded Next and became involved with Pixar, which eventually became hugely successful. Meanwhile, Apple continued struggling. Then, in 1996, Apple acquired Next for around $429 million, and hidden inside that deal was something Apple desperately needed: Steve Jobs. Soon after, Apple's struggling CEO, Gil Amelio, was removed, and Jobs returned. But this time, Jobs was different. He had failed, been rejected, and learned from the experience. He simplified Apple's product strategy, eliminated distractions, focused intensely on design, and pushed the company toward products that would redefine industries. The result was the iMac, iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Apple was transformed. But here's the real lesson. Was Apple's board wrong to remove Steve Jobs in 1985? Not necessarily. They had to make a decision based on the information they had. Jobs was brilliant but inexperienced. His leadership style created conflict, and Apple needed stability. The board believed Sculley could provide it. The bigger mistake may have been failing to recognize that Jobs and Sculley had different strengths. Sculley could manage the corporation, while Jobs could build the future. Instead of treating their disagreement as a battle where one person had to win, Apple might have benefited from finding a way to use both strengths. And that teaches us something bigger than Apple's story. In business, the smartest person in the room isn't always the best person to manage everything. A visionary sees possibilities. A manager creates systems. A board must understand the difference. Because sometimes, removing a difficult person can solve today's problem, but accidentally destroy tomorrow's opportunity. Steve Jobs losing Apple in 1985 looked like a massive failure. 11 years later, it became one of the most important turning points in Apple's history. Sometimes losing everything isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the chapter that prepares you to change the world.